All right guys, what's up? My name's Aaron. We're here on a job site, and in this video we're going to show you what is flute fill or flute filler. Stick around and we'll talk more about it. All right guys, so in my hands I've got a piece of flute fill. So what is flute fill? Flute fill is the name of the insulation that goes inside the flutes or the rib of a metal roof when you're going to recover that metal roof with either a membrane or another piece of metal, as in like a metal over metal recover. So flute fill is shaped to the size of the profile of the existing metal. So we're going to recover an existing metal roof, and we need a piece of insulation that will fit inside the profile. So you can see on this particular job, we're on an R panel. So I've got a piece of beveled insulation that's going to fit inside this particular R panel. Now I've got other insulation for different profiles that will be taller, wider, thicker, but that's what flute fill is. It's the insulation that fills inside the cavity of a metal roof so that that metal roof can be recovered with either another layer of metal or a membrane. All right, a couple things to know about flute fill. It usually comes in 8-foot sticks. So when you order flute fill, you're gonna get a bundle just like this, and it's gonna be, the pieces will be 8 foot long. Now you can order flute fill whatever size and dimensions that you need. So you're gonna measure, basically, if I needed to make a bevel piece, I'm gonna measure my bottom dimension, I'll measure my top dimension and my overall thickness, and they'll plot it out and they'll make this exactly what you need so that it'll fit inside the pan of the metal profile that you happen to be working on. All right, another thing to know about flute fill is that it comes in a variety of densities. So this is extruded polystyrene. Flute fill also comes in like a polyiso board, but the extruded polystyrene is much cheaper. Although there are times when you have to use ISO for factory mutual requirements on some buildings. So make sure you ask the building who they're insured with. If they're insured with factory mutual, it's got to be polyiso. But for most for buildings that are not factory mutual or FM insured, you can do an EPS. Now, the EPS, as I said earlier, will come in different densities. So depending on what you're recovering this flute fill with will depend on the density that you need. So if you're gonna recover your flute fill with a piece of ISO or another layer of ISO, you've got your density of ISO. So you can go down to 1 pound or 1.25 pounds EPS. If you're gonna recover this EPS, this flute fill, with a fan full or something, you're gonna need to go with 1.5 pounds. So I would say, when you build your assembly or you start to figure out what assembly you're going to go with, make sure you run that by your vendor so that they can help you determine what pound density you're going to need on your flute fill. All right, as you can see, so the flute fill is foam, styrofoam. It's EPS, extruded polystyrene, and it does have some R value. So when you do these recovers, you do add R value or insulation factor to your existing buildings. And you say, well, how much insulation value does a piece of flute fill add to a building? Well, these are figuring somewhere between R2 and R2.5 per inch. So if you needed more than that, you could step up to the polyiso, which would be about an R6 per inch. That's going to cost you a lot more though. You're going to pay for that insulation, but you're going to get roughly an R2 per inch of extruded polystyrene flute fill. All right, the last thing I would say, like when people ask me, well, how much does flute fill cost? Well, I can't really give you a specific answer because it's going to depend on the assembly and the roof type that you're going to put down. So I would quote each job out individually based on that specific assembly. So 1 pound density EPS flute fill is going to cost less than 1.25 pounds, and then it's going to cost that's going to cost less than 1.5 pounds. So it's going to depend on what you're recovering. So I would get a price. I don't really even want to give a price on the internet of just a generalization because it's all going to depend on your assembly. So make sure when you are quoting your flute fill, you're quoting the adequate pound density for the system that you're going to install, and get an accurate price that includes freight and the piece quantity for that specific job. All right guys, thanks for watching this video on flute fill. Hope you learned something. If you did, hit that like or subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.